Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And where are we this week? We are in Og territory. And as you can see, Polly Hart is with me. I am so pleased to have my friend, my longtime friend, Polly Hart, to join me tonight. And Polly, I noticed that you hear that? It's found repeat. Here, hold on. I got to fix this. Is this coming on your end here?
I hear a tiny bit of an echo.
Okay. Here we are live, fixing a problem, everybody. Let's see if I can fix this.
I can attest it did not happen several seconds ago. It just happened right now.
All right, there we go. Problem is that I had YouTube on another screen, so it started playing back. So anyways, let's try this again, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to another end of the week Bible study. I'm so happy to be here. This is my friend Polly Hart, longtime friend. And of course, this is Og territory we're coming at tonight. And I noticed, Polly, that you seem to show up whenever we talk about the Rephaim. I think that, I'm noticing a theme here. And all right, so let's get right into it because we have tons of stuff to cover tonight.
Let's do it.
I think I'm at the right count, week 39. And last week, what did we go? Oh, Pamela came by last week, and it started out. I asked her to come by just for 5 to 10 minutes and give a report on how her translation process is going. And she found out that we were talking about Korah, and she's like, I got to stay for the whole thing. So it was a very, very wonderful talk. And she discussed her future Paleo-Hebrew translation projects like Revelation, Matthew, and Song of Solomon. She's now talking about doing Joshua as well. So I'm really looking forward to what next year will bring. We're going to be doing a study through each one of those on top of the Torah portions. We saw that, or I showed that Korah committed what I believe to be the unforgivable sin, blasphemy of the Spirit. We talk about that a lot, what the blasphemy of the Spirit is. I have done studies on this, and my conclusion is that it is blasphemy of the Spirit can be defined as contempt towards the ministry and offices of a prophet, in this case, Moshe and Aaron. And so I would say that it would be to enter into this is something I don't want to do. I do not want to enter into another ministry, cause division, and try to tear people away and be in contempt of court. And that is what I believe the blasphemy of the Spirit is. That's what Korah did. Many people went to their destruction, unfortunately. According to Josephus, we saw that both Korah and Aaron were given a trial by fire, which is really interesting, and only Aaron was not consumed. Now, I'll be talking a little bit more about that tonight, but I compared Aaron being able to go through the fire versus Korah. He was taken alive down into Sheol, which had to be like a scene from a horror film. You know, imagine when he gets to the bottom and there's all these like demons and spirits of dead people and Rephaim down there, join us, coming down there and, coming and grabbing them as they're screaming. Just what a horrid scene. But I compared it to the trial by fire, which Nimrod gave to Abraham. There's numerous sources on that. I source Record of Abraham, which is, I think, the first time I ever sourced that book. And also that according to the Book of the Two Pearls, the set apart at the final battle for Zion over New Jerusalem, everyone is going to pass through the fire. Everyone, the righteous and the wicked. The wicked are going to be destroyed. The righteous are going to survive. So kind of interesting to think about that we all have to go through the fire. According to the Aramaic Targum, I showed you that Dathan and Abiram. I took you through their history. Of course, Dathan and Abiram teamed up with Korah. They were repeat offenders. They had betrayed Moshe's secret when he slew the Egyptian man. They were the ones that turned him in. They stayed behind in Egypt at Pharaoh's side after the Passover event. They wanted to remain with Pharaoh. They were sent by Pharaoh to Yasharel to work up the crowd and spread propaganda. They provoked Yahuwah at the Reed Sea, and they profaned the Sabbath. They were just repeat offenders. They were horrible dudes. Well, Dathan also happened to be from the tribe of Reuben. And I showed you where Reuben lost his birthright when committing adultery with Bilhah, more like raping her. He went into his father's bed when he was away and took her as his own. It was not by her. She was actually drunk when it happened. And she did not invite him in. Testament of Reuben, then I read from that, and this is where I thought I got really interested. I was really excited by this find. It prophesizes Korah's rebellion on Dathan's part, because Korah was from the tribe of Levi, but Dathan was from Reuben's tribe, and he makes the connection between what Dathan would do and the sin of the Watchers. Kind of interesting. So it's basically like the rebellion of the Watchers there with Moses. Not only that Dathan is one word removed from Dothan. And now Dothan happens to be, and if you look at the Hebrew Hebrew Strongs, Dothan and Dathan are just, they're the same word, basically. And Dothan is just so happens to be where Yosef was thrown into the pit. Well, that's what happened with Korah, and that's what Testament of Reuben was prophesying would happen in the pit. He keeps talking about the pit. Interesting about that incident is that Reuben was the one who did not want to murder his brother, and he did not want to sell him. And he was actually absent when Joseph was sold. And so, yeah, so the scene is kind of reversed with Dathan and Abram. And it seems that they are bitter at the fact that they lost their birthright. They want to remove Aaron from that. And then I showed you Korah's rebellion in movies like Return of the King, where you have the idea at the end of all the ground falling around them and eating them up. It according to, keep in mind, according to Numbers, it's the first time it ever happened in history. And so when you have all these movies where they're showing these armies and these evil people being swallowed up by the earth, it's being taken from that passage. I want to point this out. I also gave a love offering for Pamela last week, and I passed around the offering plate. And last month was a roller coaster of a ride. I mean, Polly was there for it. It was like I'm having a talk with my elders. Polly's one of them. I got two others, Michael and David. And I'm telling them, like, okay, guys, start going to plan B, because it looks like Tuck is going to close his stores. We're not making the money. It doesn't look like it's happening. And then not only did Yah come through, he's like watching me come through. Not only did he come through, we gave you guys in 2 days, starting last Friday night up until Sunday, gave $2,226 to Pamela. And that was such a blessing to her. She this is the woman who is doing an amazing feat. Translating the Paleo-Hebrew Bible. I mean, guys, this is amazing. We have this wonderful woman in our community. I hope you guys are all grateful to her for what we have. And we're going to do the same thing this month. I have my new budget up. You guys can go look at it. It's underneath this video. And anything that goes, when we match that, when, anything above that, it's going to go to Pamela this month. And this is what Pamela said when the money arrived. She saw it the moment it went through, when I sent it to her PayPal. She said when it arrived, she was translating this verse in Deuteronomy. And it said, "And you have been joyful to the face of Yahweh your Allahayah, you and your son and your daughter and your servants and your Amath and the Levite, which is within your gates, and the stranger and the one bereaved of father and the widow, which are in your midst, in the standing place which Yahweh your Allahayah shall select for his name to dwell there." I mean, it's a beautiful verse that is getting into, it's telling you the very heart. Every time we see when Yah tells us what is his heart, it always deals with the widow and the orphan, those who are bereaved of fathers. And this is where, he's saying where he's selecting his name to dwell. And it's a beautiful passage. So thank you, everyone who had that outpouring of love, guys. I mean, over $2,000 you guys brought in for her. Thank you very much. All right. So this week, we're dealing with blood and death. This week, we're going to see the death of the red heifer, the death of Miriam. We're going to see Moshe striking the rock as a result of his rebellion in striking the rock, his lack of faith and belief. He is told he will die before entering the promised land. Bummer. We see that Aaron dies. And then we will see Moshe lifting up a fiery serpent on a pole after a plague, and the death of many in Yasharel by those fiery serpents. And I should have added, we see more death. We see death of the Edomites, the death of, or I think it's the Amalekites. We see the death of King Og. A lot of death tonight. So let's just delve into the death. Polly, I'm going to read this. I'm going to hand it over to you for the first commentary tonight. I'm just going to read everybody 19 through 22. We're going to get the whole thing read, and then we're going to discuss. Here we go. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, arranged a word in order toward Al-Mashahah and toward Al-Aaron to declare. These are the ordinances which Yahuwah has commanded to declare. Arrange a word in order toward the sons of Yasharel, and he shall take for himself toward you a red heifer, complete, whole, sound, in which there is no blemish in her, and which has never ascended over her a yoke. And you have given her unto Eleazar the priest. And he shall lift up her toward the outside of the encampment, and shall slaughter her to his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take from her blood with his finger, and shall sprinkle over against the face of the tent of meeting from her blood 7 strokes of the anvil, and shall burn the heifer before his eyes. Her skin and her flesh and her blood with her fecal matter he shall burn. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop, and crimson, worm crimson, and you shall cast these toward the middle of the burning of the heifer. And the priest shall wash his garments, and he shall wash his flesh in water. And afterwards he shall come toward the encampment, and the priest shall be unclean, contaminated, until Ha-Arab. That's the evening. And the one burning her, he shall wash his garments in water, wash his flesh in water, and he shall be unclean, contaminated, until Ha-Arab, the evening. And a clean man shall gather the ashes of the heifer, and he shall rest them from outside the encampment in a clean place. And these shall exist for the assemblies of the sons of Yasharel to be kept in custody for the water of impurity. It is for the purification of sin. And the one collecting the ashes of the heifer shall wash his garments and be unclean, contaminated, until Ha-Arab. And this shall exist for the sons of Yasharel and for the stranger in their midst, for statutes until time of long duration. And he who touches against all dead nephash of Adam, he is unclean until Ha-Arab, again, the evening. He shall purify himself on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall shine, be clean. But conditionally, if he does not purify himself on the 3rd day, on the 7th day he shall not shine, be clean. And any touching upon a dead nephash, of course a dead soul, of Adam, which does not cleanse himself, he has defiled the Mashkan dwelling place of Yahuwah, and that nephash shall be cut off from Yasharel. For the water of impurity has not been sprinkled upon him. He shall exist unclean. His uncleanness continues upon him. This is the Torah. If a man die in a tent, all who come toward the tent and all which are in the tent, he shall be unclean for 7 days. And every open vessel which lacks a covering of cloth over him, he is unclean. And any who touches against in the open field, against one pierced with the sword, or perhaps against the dead, or perhaps against the bone of Adam, or perhaps against the grave, he is unclean 7 days. And they have taken for the unclean from the ashes of the burn for the purification, and shall place over him living water into a vessel. And a clean person shall take hyssop, and shall immerse it in water, and it shall sprinkle over the tents, and over all the vessels, and over all the nafash shahwath. I'm guessing that's plural for souls. Let me just look at this real quick. Yeah, plural form of nafash. Where was I? Which existed there, and over all the souls which existed there, and over any reaching out to touch a bone, or perhaps against one pierced, or perhaps against the dead, or perhaps a grave. And the clean shall sprinkle over the unclean on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and he has purified himself upon the 7th day, and shall wash his garments, and shall wash himself in water, and shall be purified upon Arab. And the man who is unclean and does not purify himself, then she shall cut off that nephash from the midst of the congregation, for the set apart place of Yahuwah he has defiled. The water of impurity is not sprinkled over him. He is unclean, and he shall exist to them for statutes of long duration. And he who has sprinkled the water of impurity shall wash his garments, and the one touching against the water of impurity, he shall be unclean until Arab. And all which touches against the unclean person is unclean, and any nephash touching against it shall be unclean until Arab, the evening. The death of Miriam. And the sons of Yasharel and all the gathered assembly came toward the wilderness of San. This is where we get the desert of Zin, in the first Kadash, or the first month. And the people turned aside to dwell at Kudash. And Miriam died there, and there she was buried. The water of strife. And no water existed for the assembly, and they gathered against themselves against Meshahah and against all Aaron, and Meshahah contended with the people, and they declared, saying, "Oh, if only we had breathed out our lives like our brothers breathed out their lives to the face of Yahuwah, the ever-living. And for what purpose was there bringing the congregation of Yahuwah toward this wilderness, that we and our cattle may die here? And for what reason have you caused us to ascend from Matzarim, to bring us toward this calamitous place? It is a standing place with no seed or fig tree or vine or pomegranates and lacking water to drink." By the way, just context, everyone. This is like 40 years that have gone by, and it's the same excuse. 40 years of the same whining. "And Meshahah and Aaron came from the face of the congregation toward the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they fell upon their faces, and the heavy weights of the splendor of Yahuwah the ever-living appeared over them. And Yahuwah the ever-living set forth a word in order toward Al-Meshahah to declare, 'Take the staff and gather together the assembly, you and Aaron your brother, toward the rock before their eyes. And he shall give his water, and shall bring forth unto them water from the rock. And the congregation shall drink, and your beast.' And Meshahah took the staff from before the face of Yahuwah the ever-living, like that which he had been commanded. And Meshahah and Aaron gathered together the congregation toward the face of the rock, and he declared unto them, 'Hear and answer him, I beseech you, you bitter rebels. Shall we cause to go forth out of this rock for you?' And Meshahah raised his hand and struck the rock with the staff 2 strokes of the anvil, and water went forth abundantly. And the assembly and their beasts drank. And Yahuwah the ever-living declared toward Al-Meshahah and toward Al-Aaron, 'On account of your not being faithful and in supporting me, to regard me as Kudash in the eyes of Yasharel, for that reason you shall not bring the congregation toward the land which I have given unto them.' This is the water of Meribah, where the sons of Yasharel contended with Yahuwah, and he will be Kudash in them. And Meshahah sent forth messengers from Kudash toward the Malak of Adahum to say in this manner, 'Thus says your brother Yasharel, you know all the labor, the toil, the weariness which happened to us, that our fathers descended to the place Matzarim and settled down to dwell in Matzarim a multitude of days. And Matzarim was hurtful, doing evil unto us and unto our fathers, and we cried out toward Yahuwah the ever-living, and he heard and answered our voice. And he sent a Malak, and he caused us to go forth from Matzarim, and behold, we are in Kudash, a city on the extremity of your borders. We will pass through, I beseech you. We will not pass through in fields or vineyards, and we will not drink water in a well. We will walk the Malak's pathway, not stretching out to the right hand or to the left side until happily we pass through your borders.' And Adaham, this is Edom, declared toward him, 'You will not pass through by me, lest I come out and by chance meet you with a sword.' And the sons of Yasharel declared toward him, 'By the public road we will ascend, and conditionally, if I or my livestock drink your waters, then I will give the price of sale. Only lacking anything on my feet, I will pass through.' And he declared, 'You will not pass through.' And Edom came out to meet him with an abundant amount of people and with a strong hand. And Edom, or Adaham, refused to give Yasharel passage through his borders. Therefore, Yasharel turned away from over him. And the entire assembly of the sons of Yasharel removed camp from Kudash and went unto Harhar. That's interesting, different translation from Meribah. So Meribah or Harhar. The death of Aaron. Hopefully I'm coming in loud and clear to you guys tonight. And Yahuwah the ever-living declared toward Al-Meshahah and toward Al-Aaron in Mount Har, over against the boundary of the land of Edom, to say, 'Aaron shall be gathered toward his people, for he will not go toward the land which I have given into the sons of Yasharel, on account of your rebelling against my mouth at the water of strife. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and ascend with them unto Mount Har, and cause Aaron to put off his garments, and he will clothe them upon Eleazar his son, or Eleazar his son. Then Aaron shall be gathered, and he will die there. And Meshahah fashioned like that which Yahuwah the ever-living had commanded, and they ascended toward Mount Har in the eyes of the entire assembly. And Meshahah caused Aaron to put off his garments and be clothed, and he clothed them upon Eleazar his son. And Aaron died there on the head of the mountain, and Meshach and Eleazar descended from the mountain. And all the gathered assembly observed that Aaron had breathed out his life. They wept, mourning for Aaron for 30 days, the entire house of Yasharel. And the Kanu Anuya, that would be the Canaanite, Malak Arad heard and responded. He inhabited the Negab, for Yasharel came by the pathway Athurayam. Let's see. I'm just looking for the, okay. And he made war against Yasharel to devour them, and he took captives from them. And Yasharel vowed a vow unto Yahuwah the ever-living and declared conditionally, if you will give a gift of this people into my hand, then I will consecrate their cities, utterly destroying them. And Yahuwah the ever-living heard and answered to the voice of Yasharel, and he gave up the Canaanite or the Kanu Anuya, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And he called out the name of the standing place, Charamaha. And they lifted up from Mount Har, journeying along the pathway by the Saup Sea. That would be the Red Sea, I believe, or the Red Sea. For they had turned aside from the land of Edom, and the Nephash of the people was divided because of the journey, and the people set words against Alahayam and against Meshach. For what purpose have you caused us to ascend from Matzrim to die in a wilderness lacking water? And our Nephash loathes this despicable bread. And Yahuwah the ever-living sent out among the people the burning, poisonous Nakashayam. And they bit the people, and a great many people from Yasharel died. Let me just see what her note is on this here, which would be the plural form of Nakash, or serpents. And the people came toward Al-Mashah and declared, we have erred, and we have set forth words against Yahuwah the ever-living, and against you. Intervene toward Yahuwah, that he will turn aside from over us. Ath ha-nukash. And Meshach intervened for the people, and Yahuwah the ever-living declared toward Al-Mashah, fashion for yourself a seraph, and place him upon a standard, and it shall exist. All who look upon him shall then live. And Meshach fashioned a nakash of copper, and he placed it upon a standard, and he existed conditionally. If those bitten by hot nakash, a man, when he beheld the nakash of copper, he lived. And the sons of Yasharel lifted up and encamped. And they encamped in Abath. And they lifted up from Abath and encamped at Yaya ha Abarayam in the wilderness, which is over against the face of Moab, toward the rising of Shamash. And from there they lifted up and set up camp in the valley of Zarad. From there they removed camp and set themselves down from the passage of Aranuyan, which is in the wilderness that goes forth from the borders of the Amariah for Aranun, at the border of Moab, between Moab and between the Amariah. And of course, over this account, it is declared in the book, the wars of Yahuwah, all that he did in the Suap Sea and in the valleys of Aranun, and the pouring out brooks which extend to the dwelling places of Er, and then reclines upon the border of Moab, and from there unto the well. This is the well where Yahuwah the ever-living spoke unto Meshach, gather together the people, and I will give to them water. Then Yasharel sang this song. I'm not going to sing it for you, but I need to have Pamela on right now to sing this. Spring up, well, sing in reply to us, the well dug by princely ones, the spontaneous willing nobles of the people, with their staves upon the decree in the wilderness, a gift from Yah, a gift of Yah from the torrents of Al, that would be like El or Elohim, Alaham, unto the heights, and from the heights to the valleys, which is in the fields of Moab, to the head of Fasagaha, and looking out over the face of the waste. Polly, if you want to sing that song later tonight, you are most welcome to. And Yasharel sent forth messengers toward Sayakan, Malak of the Amariah, to say, I will pass through your land. We will not spread out into the fields or vineyards. We will not drink the water of the well. We will walk along the pathway, the Ha-Malak, the pathway until that we pass through your borders. But Sihon would not give Yashruel passage through his territory. Then Sihon gathered together all his people, and he came out to meet against Yashruel, and he came to Yahadzah and waged war on Yashruel, and Yashruel struck him with the mouth of the sword and seized possessions of his land from Aranun unto Yabak, unto the sons of Ammon. For strong was the border of the sons of Ammon, and Yashruel took all these cities. And Yashruel settled down to dwell in all the cities of the Amariah, in Chashaban, and in all her villages. For Chashaban was the city of Sihon Malak of the Amariah. It was he who at first made war against the Malak of Moab and took all his land from his hand, even unto Aranun. Therefore they spake in parables. He came to Chashaban. They built and prepared the city for Sihon. For fire came forth from Chashaban, a flaming point of a spear from the town of Sihon. She consumed air of Moab, the Baaleah, from the high places of Aranun. Woe to you, Moab! You are lost, perished, cut off, the people of Kamush. He has given his sons that escaped into captivity unto Sihon, the Malak of the Amariah, and we cast arrows, destroying him from Kashaban unto Daabon, and we have laid them waste unto Tupac, which reaches unto Meadabah. And Yashruel settled down to dwell in the land of the Amariah. And Meshahah set forth men to tread about, exploring, spying Yaazar, and they seized upon the villages and took possession of the Amariah that were there. And they turned themselves and they ascended the pathway of the Bashan and Og, or as it's pronounced here, I guess, Eg, Malak of Ha-Bashan. He and all his people fought at Adarayah. And Yahweh, the ever-living, declared toward Al-Mashahah, you shall not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, him and all his people and his land. And you shall work unto him like that which you fashion unto Sihon, Malak of the Amariah, which settled down to dwell in Kashaban. And they smote him and his sons and all his people until none remained, or was left to him a survivor. And they took possession of his land. And then we see the opening sentence of chapter 22 here. And the sons of Yashruel lifted up and encamped in the dry, arid region of Moab over against the side of the Yarden by, that would be Jericho, but Jericho, I guess. All right. That concludes the reading of the Torah tonight. I am going to hand it over to Polly for first commentary. And we have some very exciting notes that he presented tonight. So,
so exciting! I'm
Polly,
so excited.
Polly, you tell me what we're looking at. Do you want me to go through this right now?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I am just overwhelmed. This is the first time you've done it like this, because it's incredible. Okay, I've got just a small screen, so that one is the what does it say? It should have the reference on there. Okay, so this is 21, right? Yeah, this is 21, and I kind of was like, you know what? What's he gonna do? How's he gonna remember that? Okay, Numbers 21. Only the parts of it were like, hey, what are we going to do today? Okay, let's go murder these guys. And I put a little nod to Zippor, because that's the next portion where Balaam and Balak get involved. But this is like, and I don't know if you look at the one in the middle.
I'm saying, like,
there.
Is this like a fire burning? Like,
these are three cities that are total devoted to Haram. Totally. Yeah, it's called Three Less. And it's just, it's sad. You know what's the most sad part is that they're cousins, Moab. So you've got this country and you've got this road like going straight through the country. They're like, no, go around. They had to go all the way around. That's just mean. I mean, think about the gas mileage. But so this is 3 less, and I was, because I've done this maybe three other times, and I'm like, what do I do? How do I because Noel's got this, like, he's probably got 3,000 pages of notes. I'm like, oh man, so what am I good at? I want to draw something. Okay, so that's what I'll do. And here's Moses, this is Moshe. I should write a poem. So yeah, that's the first one there.
Okay, you want me to go to the next?
Yeah, go ahead and go to the next one there. This is Moses Whack. So Moses Whack is that's just a kind of like the depiction of, sitting there, and he's like, well, but these stiff-necked people, I'm just gonna whack the rock. And so he does that, and the people are all astounded. That was the first one I did, and I think it was made in 202. It should be 2024 there on the left. But Numbers chapter 20 verses 10 through 13. Moses Whack.
Yeah, I just see a 202. You didn't finish it.
Yeah, there's 2024.
All right.
Just 202.
I do that all the time. I'll look on papers I wrote like in 2023, and it says like 2020. I'm always like on a year behind. So I'm still living in 2023 right now.
I'm 2,000 years off. So and we know it wasn't 202 BCE, so whatever. But yeah, so mistakes are made. Okay, next please. Okay, so this is the very beginning. This is 19. This is
I went in complete reverse order. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So I guess it doesn't really matter where you start, because you got to be purified on the third day or the seventh day, and the guy who's being purifying, he's doing the thing. He's got to get purified again. So good old Ted. Ted's dead. We get the cow, and then we sprinkle hyssop on the ashes of the dead cow and the poo-poo, and then no touchy, and then he. Anyway, it's kind of broken, but that's Numbers 19. That's my best depiction, and that's my best cow. I've never drawn a cow. That's the best cow I've ever drawn, because that's the only cow I've ever drawn. So it's also
there's always a first.
Mm-hmm. So this is my red heifer. He's black and white. Yeah. Okay. Moving on, please. This is awful.
Well, this one I'm gonna have to scroll up and down because it's a really long vertical one here. So.
Yeah. Yeah, this is our Nehushtan. So this is the. I'm gonna make a pole, and then might as well throw the menorah on top, and I put the menorah on the bottom as well. I kind of got a little carried away, a little bit more detail in this guy. This is Numbers 21 4 through 9. So now I actually, while you were going through there, and I kind of missed the last parts of it with Og and everything. My favorite anti-hero. But I was researching here. Pamela says copper. And so I went to the Strong's, and it says copper. And so I'm really, really blown away, because bronze, which is copper and zinc, brass, which is copper and tin, but copper by itself is copper. Now, copper is a superconductor. It's the highest superconductor besides silver. So you have silver, copper, gold. And it's a snake is a coil, right? Coiled around the thing. So Moses literally created the first copper coil by God's direction. And so we know that the Baghdad battery was a electrolysis, and it was an actual battery. But this might have been something to do with aero electricity. I don't know. So I'd have to really dig into this. But that drawing is just a fanciful little guy there, and I added some details. Yeah, there we go.
I like that he has a mace for a tail there. All right.
Yeah, that was just a real quickie. Okay, so these are the songs. Let me just pull up this one, and I'll read it. This is a song of Numbers 21, 17 and 18, and I'm not going to sing it. I'm sorry. I know Rebecca wants me to, but I just went through, and I didn't go through Pamela's notes. I just went through the Strong's. Ascend up, jump and shout, you pit, you deep water chasm. Answer in response to it. The captains, the rulers, they dug, they delved the deep water chasm. The magistrates and rulers of all the flocks of the peoples hollowed it out, bored it down, hacking with their staves. So that's my poem on that one. And then we have another song or poem or lyric in Numbers 21, 27 through 30. And I did the same formulaic. It's not rhyme scheme or anything like that, but it's poetry. So the idea with Hebrew poetry, like if you read the book of Psalms, you'll find Proverbs, especially Proverbs. You rhyme the idea. So you have, as the fool returns to his vomit, so as the dog returns to his vomit, so does the fool to his folly. So you have the idea, and sometimes the idea is reversed for a different rhyme scheme. But this is just whatever, free flow. And visit and go into the place far east of Jordan in Heshbon. Build excitement, create the city, rebuild the city of Sihon, let it be restored. Behold, there was fire, it went out directly from the place of Heshbon, from the city of Sihon. It devoured devouring Ar of Moab. It sound like a little pirate there. The masters and husbands of all the heights of Arnon. Lament, mourn in anguish, Moab, you have perished, wandered away. You have been laid to destruction. Behold, the flocks of people of Chermosh. He let go and relinquished his sons. They are now refugees. His daughters and children are led into captivity. Oh, behold, Sihon, the king of the Amorites. They flowed into death as water. Heshbon is destroyed as far as Dibon. We stupefied them, devastated them as far as Nophah, even as far as Medeba.
Good.
Good. Yeah, good stuff. So those are my actual notes besides just mental gymnastics on this new thing with the Nefushtin copper coil thing, which I'm still like, what's going on? So I guess what do we want to go back and how do you want to do the rest of this?
Well, I'll start going through my
back
notes.
at 19. Okay, yeah. And then just
And
when you want to throw me back in there, that's cool.
Okay. So let me actually fix this again. So we are boom up on top. All right.
Oh, cool.
So now starting out, you guys have heard me say this before, and we see in the very beginning of the chapter, we see Yahweh had talked about his ordinances. And of course, it has to do with the red heifer. And in the Torah, we see different types of laws categorized as the following: judgments, commandments, statutes, and ordinances. Now, I could be completely wrong about this. Please let me know if anyone disagrees. And I've been trying to think about that through this Torah portions, how we organize these. What are we looking at? What is a judgment? What is a statute or ordinance? What is a commandment? Right? So you have the pictures of chickens here. There's a bunch of chickens, but there are also roosters and hens. So you have roosters and hens, and they're all chickens, right? You have three categories right there for two sexes. Well, I think the Torah is very similar. So likewise, there are judgments and there are statutes, and they are all commandments. Okay. So over here, you got statutes and ordinances, they're commandments. Over here, there's judgments, they're commandments, just like the chickens, right? Or cattle, right? You have the cow and the bull. You guys know what I'm talking about. So the commands, when I think of never mind that note there. When I think of judgments, I think of natural law. All right. So there are things that Sodom and Gomorrah were judged for. They fell under judgments that went against natural law. They were not in a covenant relationship with Yah, but they were so against natural law. He's like, you're being judged for this. All right. So we see the same thing in America today, where we are sliding down into this abyss of immorality, right? Where, people can't define what a guy or a girl is. They can't define, right? They can't even define, what a mommy is or who is able to give birth to children. Like, we are falling into this abyss where people can't even define natural law anymore, and there will be a judgment attached to that. But there are also ordinances. Now, what I am defining as an ordinance or a statute, it's an authoritative order, a decree, a piece of legislation enacted by an authority which is legally binding. Now, that's what a command is as well, but statutes are perpetually binding, and these type of laws must be obeyed because they are commanded by, in this case, Yahweh, not because natural law demands it to be so. So I want you guys to think about the difference here as I'm piecing this together. What's going through my mind is that there are statutes and ordinances which are commanded by Yah for anyone in a covenant relationship with him. Okay, so classic ordinances, well, let me just go through some of these. Some of these would be Passover and unleavened bread. Okay, so the Gentile nations are not going to be judged, in my opinion, for not keeping Passover. They are not in a covenant with Yah. But if you are in a covenant with Yah, these are ordinances that need to be kept. So you can see right there, Passover. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. You shall keep it as a feast by an ordinance forever. We see that here with unleavened bread, which follows Passover. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. Not as a judgment, but as an ordinance. That comes from Exodus chapter 12. Here's another one. We see pure olive oil. And I was really excited when I talked about this back in Exodus chapter 27. And thou shalt command the children of Yasharel that they bring thee pure olive oil, beaten for the light, to cause the lamp to burn always. Now keep in mind, the Ruach HaKodesh lights this fire, and it is up to the priest to maintain it. And not only that, it is a command, an ordinance, that all of Yasharel bring pure olive oil. They all have to bring it. And this reminds us of the wise and foolish virgins. In the tabernacle of the congregation without the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before Yahweh. It shall be a statute forever until their generations on the behalf of the children of Yasharel. We see offering in the land. Now, and I'm not going to go off down this trail, but a question was brought up tonight in our group beforehand, in our community: what constitutes the land? It was an interesting question because we know that the land is Israel, right? The kingdom of Judah, kingdom of Israel. But if Yahushua HaMashiach inherited all the nations and now he is king over all the nations, the question is, what is the land? And I was like, wow, I can't answer that. That's actually a really good question. It's something I'll be thinking about. And I throw it out there for you guys to think about as well. Well, it says this: and if a stranger sojourns with you, or whoever be among you in your generations, and will offer an offering made by fire of sweet savor unto Yahweh, as he do, so he shall do. One ordinance shall be both for you of the congregation and also for the stranger that sojourns with you, an ordinance forever in your generations. As ye are, so shall the stranger be before Yahweh. Now, of course, this is a theocracy here, and in today's context in America, we are not a theocracy. We are not led by Yahweh. I wish we were. We are not. We have other men that have been put over us by, I would say, the lack of faith of individuals who wanted men to rule them instead of Yah. Anyways, it says one Torah and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger that sojourns with you. That comes from Numbers 15. That was just a couple weeks ago. So anyways, let's talk about this red heifer. Keep in mind, this is an ordinance. This is a command. And again, what's really interesting about the ordinances is that unlike the judgments that I see, where it's you living your life, ordinances are specific where Yah's like, if you're in a covenant relationship with me, you have to come and present yourself. This is something you have to do. So we saw here, I want to talk about how the red heifer that we read about in chapter 19 connects us to Mashiach. Now, Polly, if you have any thoughts, please go ahead and jump in. And you could see here, it talks about a red heifer. And where I highlighted in this yellow, this is what I want to talk about, how it plays out with Mashiach. Complete whole sound, in which there is no blemish in her, and which has never ascended over her a yoke. And you have given her unto Eleazar the priest, and he shall lift up her toward the outside of the encampment, and shall slaughter her to his face. This is an incredible picture that's being put forward. So let me break this down for you. Before I do, there's one more. When you jump a few verses forward, verse 6, I'm not going to read the whole chapter again because obviously I just did. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and crimson worm crimson, and you shall cast these toward the middle of the burning of the heifer. So these are all things I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. We see several words here. Now, I'm not going with the paleo here, obviously, because I'm not a paleo scholar, and I do have Masoretic, modern Hebrew at my disposal. So you see Adam, red. We see Adam, the first man. So we're dealing with a red. The first, dealing with Adam. We're dealing with Adama, the ground and the land, and blood. And you can see all these words being used in here. So these are all important things to look for. So what I want to touch on first is that Yahushua HaMashiach was the unblemished red heifer. Now, we talk a lot about, was he our Passover lamb? Was he our heifer? Was it one or the other? Was it both? At this point in time, I'm like, why can't it be both? I don't think it has to be one or the other. A lot of people argue over this. I see cases for both. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of Elohim. Therefore, the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Isn't that interesting? If we truly know him, we're going to be a stranger to the world. That should be a comforting thought for those of us who are wondering, why are we a stranger to this world? Well, that is why. Beloved, now we are the sons of Elohim, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the Torah. For sin is the transgression of the Torah. You guys know it's one of my favorite passages. That right there, 1 John 3:4 defines for us what sin is. Right? Sin is a transgression of the Torah. And ye know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Right? He is the people can say this about the Passover lamb too, but he is the perfect, unblemished red heifer. Takes away our sins. Whoever abides in him sins not. Whoever sins hath not seen him, neither known him. And people will use that last line there to say, oh, see, if you can keep on sinning and it's not really sinning because you're in him. Actually, no, you have to finish that sentence through. That's a complete perversion of what it's saying, because he's saying if you do sin, then you're not in him. So you can't, it's not like a circular argument. Oh, but I'm not sinning because I'm in him. No. If you're sinning, then you're not in him. You're not in him. So going on down to Hebrews, it says this: seeing then that we have a great high priest, that'd be Yahushua HaMashiach, our Melchizedek high priest, that has passed into the heavens, Yahushua, the son of Elohim, let us hold fast our profession. Of course, you're holding fast to your faith and your faithfulness. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly into the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Hebrews chapter 4. 2 Corinthians, digging into Paul. Now then, we are ambassadors for Mashiach, as though Elohim did beseech you by us. We pray you in Mashiach's stead, be reconciled to Elohim. For he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of Elohim in him.
Hey, Noel.
Yes.
Do you find that Yeshua, in Paul's eyes at least, do you find that Yeshua was more of the perfect lamb or the scapegoat, like that went away to Azazel? Or do you think he's a combination of both in that way? Because when you would make a covenant with the turtle doves, right, you wouldn't cut the turtle dove, you would cut the other animals. And so we know from that instance that the skin of Adam and Eve were not made of feathers. It was a different type of skin. So we know that there are different types of animals. And I believe that of the mammalian kind, the sheep, the goat, the cow, all these are, clean. But it could be with stripes or without stripes, blemished or unblemished, or spotted or not spotted, right? Pure red, pure white. And so I don't know. I'd just like to dissect that and dig into it a little farther. What do you think about that?
Okay, so I think your question was, in Pauline theology,
Mm-hmm.
is Mashiach more of a the goats, as in the goat and the scapegoat, the Azazel goat, or is he a red heifer or the unblemished lamb? Is that correct?
Right. Like, I'm just trying to, it's all metaphor anyway, right? And it's all a teaching tool. But I just kind of want to dig into it, because you can really see him as all of them, really. And it wouldn't hurt your faith or help your faith any, really. Why, right? There's no heresy in saying he is or he isn't, because
Yeah,
I mean, and the writer of Hebrews used a lot of metaphor, right? He's this because of this, or and maybe it's not metaphor, maybe it's a spiritual truth that I just need to dig deeper into. I don't know. I was just looking for opinion on that.
Yeah, so those are two questions. The first I can't answer. The second I think I can. The first question is, what is Pauline theology on this? And that's a good question. And so that would be like almost like a thesis paper, right? Like, okay, when Paul talked about the unblemished, the blood of Mashiach, what is he talking about? Is he talking about the heifer, the goat, the lamb, right? Or all the above, or what is he talking about? I can't answer that. That's a good question. That's a very good question. I can't answer that.
And it's I'm sorry to interrupt, but it kind of springs to mind that this heifer never had a yoke. But Yeshua said, my yoke is easy. And so you could say that he was the only one who was never yoked to anything else, because he was himself. He was his father who was himself. He was always him. So he was never yoked to anyone. And so in that way, he is a red heifer. And anyway, I've got more than 2 questions, 10,000 questions.
That will be one of the questions. And so that will be one of the passages I talked about. And I think a point that I made was that, depending on who you talk to, right? I could get a panel here, a debate of, okay, the Mashiach is a red heifer person, Mashiach is the Passover lamb person, and Mashiach is the goat person. And the Day of Atonement, Azazel goat versus other goat. And we could let them duke it out and see who's more correct. But I don't see a problem with him being all three. That he said, obviously Moshe wrote of him, right? And so he's setting up this temple, this tabernacle complex that all reflect the Melchizedek priesthood and ultimately his body. So I mean, we see it with the doves as well. I mean, I'll be quoting here tonight the dove that is killed versus released. That is another reference to Mashiach. He's also a dove. All right, let me just show this here. 1 Peter 2:24. I'll read this whole passage. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear Allah Hayam, honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the forward. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscious toward Allah Hayam endure grief, suffering wrongfully. And there's the word conscious again, kind of interesting. For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with Allah. For even hereunto were ye called, because Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example that ye should follow his steps. So we walk as he walked. He showed us how to walk. We don't go walking off in the opposite direction. That makes us an Azazel goat. We don't want to do that. Wander off into the wilderness. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. So right there we see a possible Passover lamb, heifer, who when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judges righteously. Who his own self bore our sins in his own body on the tree. And I love to quote this, because this is, people say this is a Pauline theology thing. And it's actually, Peter as well. He agrees that he took our sins, he bore them on his body on the tree. That we, being dead to sins, there's a Paul phrase right there, dead to sins, should live unto righteousness, by whose stripes ye were healed. Now, I probably lost in my audience. I think all the anti-Paul people, maybe there's still some sticking around. I think maybe some people had hopes I would go anti-Paul again. I do think that Peter expresses it a lot better here. Like, I read this, I get it. It makes total sense to me. I could see where Pauline theology is, in my opinion, the same thing. I just don't think he expresses in such a way. People are like, yeah, we're dead to our sin, so now we can go sin or whatever. Like, we don't have the standard of righteousness anymore. But it's like, no. Like, Peter's saying, like, you died to your sin. He took our sins on his body. Now you need to live into righteousness, right? You are now dead to sinning. You're living into righteousness. All right. And this is what, Paul, you had talked about, the heifer never being yoked. And Mashiach says this: come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest into your soul, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I do think that that's maybe a reference to the heifer. I had someone recently criticizing me online on a show saying how this Torah thing is that I'm presenting too heavy of a yoke. I'm putting a heavy yoke around people, and and Jesus would never do that. And I don't even know where to begin with that. But it's kind of like one of those things where people say, I can do all things through Christ except the Torah. I can't do that. That's
Yeah.
too heavy of a yoke.
Hold on. That's I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength is a misquote of that verse. The verse, context of that verse, the first paragraph, 2 paragraphs above it, he's talking about his friends. Paragraphs below it, he's talking about his friends. And it says, I can do all things through those that give me strength. That verse literally says, I can do all things because my friends give me strength. It never says theos or Christos or whatever it would be in the Greek.
Fair enough.
So when people use that verse, I have to say, I'm sorry. That's not what the Bible says. But anyway, but no, I get it. And I think that the prophecy, he will rule with a rod of iron, also plays into this somehow. But anyway, that's just me.
What I was going to say, for me, a heavy yoke is actually being in sin. Like the Torah is a liberty. If you walk the path of righteousness, you are not shackled down to sin. You are not a slave to sin. Therefore, you are in liberty from slavery. So to disobey the Torah and to live in sin is a heavy yoke. Just want to point that out. All right. Now, we also saw that the heifer was lifted up, and we're going to see something else lifted up. Well, we already saw the serpent lifted up, but so Yahushua said, when you have lifted up the son of Adam, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own, but speak exactly what the Father has taught me. Yochanan or John 8:28. So similar to the red heifer, and it has been suggested that the heifer was lifted up on kind of a stake or a pole, similar to the warp and the wolf, the cross, the tav. So he said that they would not know who he was until he was lifted up. And we actually see that moment in the Gospel of Nicodemus 22:20. And I've done studies, of course, on how Hasatan, people don't like when I say this, but Hasatan didn't even know who he was until after he was crucified. And it makes sense. It goes from top management. Like the sons of Satan didn't know who he was until Satan found out. But it says, this is the last line of the Gospel of Nicodemus, which I love. And they're talking to Pontius Pilate. These are the temple controllers. And they say, and so it appears that Yahushua, whom we crucified, is Yahushua HaMashiach, the son of Elohim, and true and almighty Elohim. Amen. What a beautiful ending to the book. They finally figured it out. And of course, then they double down on their wickedness, which makes it worse. But we see that the priests took Yahushua out of the city gates, is what they were to do with the red heifer. And straightway in the morning, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and bound Yahushua and carried him away and delivered him to Pilate. Mark 15:1. Yahushua was crucified outside of the camp. In Hebrews 13:12, it says, which they had to, of course, kill the red heifer outside the camp. We have an altar whereof they have no right to eat, which serve the tabernacle. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. And so they're actually making the comparison for us. We don't even need to do it. Wherefore Yahushua also, just like the animals taken outside the camp, he also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach. For here have we no continuing city, but we seek one to come. There's a nice New Jerusalem passage there that seems to speak in the exoteric of an actual brick and mortar city. Was cedar wood a horizontal beam, as I previously suggested a few minutes ago, similar to what Yahushua was nailed to? And we read this in Galatians. Mashiach hath redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangs on a tree. All right. Let's see what else I can pull up here. Hyssop and Passover. We see that in the first Passover, Because keep in mind there is hyssop used with the red heifer. And he shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin and strike the lintel on the 2 side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. Exodus 12:22. We see hyssop with the leper and Mashiach. This is in Leviticus 14:1-7. Then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed. Oh, let me read this whole thing, because this is what I was talking about, Polly, about the bird example as well. I did this breakdown in Leviticus 14, did a whole lesson on, not doing it again, but we see a beautiful picture of the bird that is killed and the one that is set free, meaning those who are cleansed of their uncleanliness based on the death and the sacrifice of Mashiach, taking it on for us. This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought into the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper, then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds alive and clean, and cedar wood and scarlet and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. This running water reminds us of living water, and I had a whole thing on the earthen vessel as well. As for the living bird, he frees, he's released. Let's keep looking. Hyssop and Mashiach. And when he died in Yochanan, 1929, we see that after this, Yahushua, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, said, I thirst. So he's realizing here, like, this is the end. I got to make sure everything's fulfilled. I got one more thing to fulfill. And he did this. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar and put it upon hyssop and put it to his mouth. And when Yahushua therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost, or the ruach. And so it's almost like he needed that hyssop, that one last thing, to be like, okay, checked it all off. I fulfilled all these things I needed to fulfill before my death.
Hey, Noel.
Yes.
So I'm over here on organicfacts.net/hyssop. And it does 3 basic things. Just the herb itself helps with the respiratory conditions, like it can heal bronchiolitis, heart health. So that's the second thing, and gastrointestinal. So it's not only just like there. Yeah, I think you wanted them to have it on hand all the time, because it's so beneficial for you. It's just a really healthy thing. And I think that there's so much wisdom, like the obvious thing about not eating a pig because it's only got a 4-hour intestinal tract, whereas the cow has like a 4-day intestinal tract. So just the obvious things in science that we're finding out that Torah is so powerful on. It's like, hey, don't do this because of whatever. We understand now through science and through medical science, especially in this one, just how powerful these things are. Just wanted to throw that on there.
Thank you, Polly. There was something that I went in my studies this week to really trip me out, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this, because I've talked a lot about the phoenix, and I was thinking about this idea of this the heifer being burned. And now Mashiach's body did not see decay, so make that clear. But I was like, well, how in the world does the heifer being burned, if all these things reflect Mashiach, where does Mashiach come into that? And I'm looking here at the letter of Clement to the Corinthians. You guys know I love Clement of Rome. I did a whole study on this. I'm going to skip chapter 24, but right here you can see he's talking about the resurrection, that our hope is that we too can be resurrected. But then he turns to an example of the resurrection, and he says this. He talks about the phoenix. He said, let us consider the marvelous sign which is seen in the regions of the east, that is, in the parts above about Arabia. There is a bird which is named the phoenix, this being the only one of its kind, liveth for 500 years. And when it hath now reached the time of its dissolution, that it should die, it maketh for itself a coffin of frankincense and myrrh and the other spices, into the which in the fullness of time it entereth, and so it dieth. But as the flesh rotteth, a certain worm is engendered. So this idea, which is nurtured from the moisture of the dead creature, and putteth forth its wings. Then when it is grown lusty, it taketh up that coffin where are the bones of its parent, and carrying them journeyeth from the country of Arabia, even into Egypt, to the place called the city of the sun. And in the daytime, in the sight of all, flying to the altars of the sun, it lieth them thereupon. And this done, it setteth forth to return. So the priests examine the registers of the times, and they find that it hath come when 500 years is completed. I could comment much more on this, but so it's kind of interesting. So the phoenix is reborn by in the fire, in the ashes, and a worm comes out. Well, let's see what we read here in as Mashiach as a worm. We see this in Psalm 22. They cried unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were not confounded. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised of the people. And they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip. They shake the head, saying, he trusted on Yahweh that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. So he's saying, look, I've been faithful to you. I've been obedient to you. And these people are mocking me, saying, oh yeah, let's see, him get delivered, right? Let's see how, see how loyal he was to Yah. And he refers to himself as a worm, which is kind of interesting because Clement is talking about how Mashiach is the phoenix that comes down as a representation of Mashiach and him rising up out of the ashes and all of our resurrection. I'll be talking about the fire again that we all have to pass through. But you guys see the worm there. So does that tie in with the heifer being burned? Kind of yes, maybe no. But I thought that was interesting. So I showed you this last week, and this comes from Record of Abraham. You could see this through the Aramaic Targum. You could see this in Jasher. You could see this in the writings of Abraham. You see this in multiple different books. But the idea that Nimrod, who worshiped fire, and his idea of worshiping fire was trying to figure out how he was going to dance into the fire and survive it. And when the judgment came, he throws Abraham in the fire. 3 days pass. He's still living through the fire. He's perplexed. He doesn't get it. Of course, Nimrod never repents. He wants to survive that fire, but on his own way. And Yah's like, hey, Nimrod, how about I show you how you can survive the fire? Because that fire is coming. You're going to go into it. This is how you survive it. I will, if you worship me and you live a righteous life, you too can pass through that. And Nimrod was like, nah, not really interested in that. That's usually the end of the day, the story, how it goes. And again, I showed you last week, Book of the Two Pearls, this idea that everybody's going to be going through the fire. The righteous, the wicked will be burnt up. The righteous will come through. So we see that with the heifer as well, the idea of the importance of burning it. Mashiach and living water. We saw this in Numbers 15 tonight, where it said, place over him living water into a vessel. Well, and this is, of course, still in the context of the heifer. We've been talking about the heifer a long time tonight. I have a lot more to get to, but I think this is really important stuff. And we see in Yirmiyahu, it says, O Yahweh, the hope of Yashrael, all that forsake thee shall be ashamed, and they that depart from me shall be written in the earth, because they have forsaken Yahweh, the fountain of living water. Heal me, O Yahweh, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for thou art my praise. Of course, in Yochanan, Yahusha said that he says, he that believeth on me, as the scriptures has saith, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. Oh, the sprinkling of blood. This was really interesting. And what book am I reading from right here? This is Hebrews, and it says, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast to the profession of our faith without wavering. Hebrews is one of those books where it is so constantly twisted into lawlessness. I just don't get it. I mean, the writer of this book was all about we need to hold on to the ancient path, the ancient faith. And right here, I mean, the whole idea of the high priest sprinkling blood onto our hearts is so that we can live out the spirit of the Torah. We can have that transformed, circumcised heart, remove the evil conscience. First Yochanan, the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach, his son, cleanseth us from all sin. And remember, because the heifer is killed outside the camp, the blood is brought into the tabernacle and sprinkled. Okay, I have one more thing. I put this Red Bull in here. I thought this was interesting. One more thing to talk about the red heifer, and then I promise we will move on. Abel as the red heifer. This was really interesting, looking at Enoch. This comes from the parables, the long story of the animal parade and the different bulls. And it says, and after this, I saw another dream, and I will show the whole dream to thee, my son. And Enoch lifted up his voice and spoke to his son Methuselah, to thee, my son, will I speak. Hear my words. Incline thine ear to the dream vision of thy father. Before I took my mother, Edna, I saw in a vision on my bed, and behold, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white. And after it came forth a heifer, and along with this later came forth two bulls. So the heifer is obviously Eve, the white bull is Adam. The two bulls came forward. You guys know who they are, Cain and Abel. One of them black and the other red. The black one was Cain. The red one was Abel. And the black bull gored the red one and pursued him over the earth. And thereupon I could no longer see that red bull. But that black bull grew, and that heifer went with him. And I saw that many oxen proceeded from him, which resembled and followed him. And that cow, the first one, calling Eve a cow. Ugh, horrible. Anyways, Eve, the cow, went from the presence of that first bull, Adam, in order to seek the red one, but found him not, and lamented with a great lamentation over him and sought him. I'll actually be, when I give my Anunnaki presentation in a little over a week from now, it's all ready to go. I'll be talking about that, about multiple cross references in ancient times of this importance that Eve, or Chatwaha, that she actually knew what Cain did without anyone telling her. She had it in a dream, and she went up and ran to go apprehend them, and it was too late. And the Sumerians talk about the same thing. Okay, I don't know if you have any, before I talk about the stone of Scone, Polly, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to the red heifer, but I think I beat that heifer down enough, talked about it. I think you guys got the point. It's clearly all about Mashiach. The stone of Scone. Now, I found this interesting. We see in, this is, I'm be talking about how Moshe beat the rock, and I did a whole presentation on this a couple years ago. Don't know where exactly I am. I think that there is a good likelihood. I think there's a good likelihood that the stone of Scone in Britain is the what we call Jacob's pillow, or Yaakov. And we see this in Exodus. Now, therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and guard my covenants, and that's where we get the word Brit, as in British, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak unto the children of Yasharel. And as I've pointed out in the past, I do think Britain was ground zero for the kingdom. Now it is ground zero for apostasy, as is America, but it wasn't always so, I think. So there is the actual pictures of the stone of Scone and a bunch of guys standing around. I don't know what they're talking about. And here we see Queen Elizabeth, her coronation. I guess that was back in the 50s. And you can see the stone there underneath the throne. And I didn't watch Charles when he was made king. I didn't watch, but I think they moved the stone back in. Wasn't sure. The coronation stone. So where it gets its origin, actually, the stone is, I could take you all the way back to, according to the Aramaic Targum, it claims that Adam and Eve, or Chotwaha, when they came out of paradise, when they were kicked out, they built an altar of unhewn stone, and that this altar is what Noah then later rebuilt after the flood. It goes on from there. And this happens to be the same altar that Yaakov built. Yaakov took 12 stones from the altar on which his father Yitzchak had lain bound as a sacrifice. A lot of history on these stones. And he said, it was the purpose of Elohim to let 12 tribes arise, but they have not been begotten by Abraham or Yitzchak. If now these 12 stones will unite into a single one, then shall I know for a certainty that I am destined to become the father of the 12 tribes. At this time, the second miracle came to pass. The 12 stones joined themselves together and made one. And that's the beginnings of the stone of Scone. And he said in Genesis, and this stone, which I have set for a pillar, shall be Elohim's house. And so that's where a lot of this history comes from, this idea that wherever this pillar is, there is the house. Of course, it's in, Westminster Abbey now and then. Let's keep reading. Oh, we see here the prophecy of Yaakov that with Yosef, that he would have the stone of Yasharel. The thought is that this stone passed with Yosef into Egypt, and it came out of Egypt. In the Talmud, we read that 2 arks came up out of the land of Egypt with Yasharel, one containing the Scone stone, the Sconia stone, and the other the body of Yosef. Now, this is what really tripped me out. Well, I want to first state that there was in Exodus, there was the first rock that was smited. That is over there on the left. That is in Mount Sinai. It's right there. You could see it. But then the other rock was completely different. This was not the same rock. Some scholars will say this is the same story repeated. It's a different place, different location, different circumstance as far as I'm concerned. And this is what Paul says. This is what really tripped me out when I saw this. He says in 1 Corinthians, moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all our fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized into Moshe in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual food. That would be the manna, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them. And that rock was Mashiach. Wait, what? He's saying that there was a rock that followed them around. So that's where, again, where the whole the stone comes into this. That these were one of the 2 arks that they were literally carrying around, and this from this little tiny Yaakov's pillow, the water was gushing out. That rock was Mashiach. Kind of crazy to think about. And the Ascents of Yaakov says the same thing. Look what this says. And I love it when you get Paul talking about something in the Ascents of James, which comes from the Clementine homilies, actually agree. So it says, but when Moshe had gone up to the mount and was staying there 40 days, the people, although they had seen Mitzrayim struck with the 10 plagues and the sea parted and passed over by them on foot, manna also given to them from heaven for bread, and drink supplied to them out of the rock that followed them. All right. So that one that he split there at Mount Sinai, that didn't follow them around. So even they agreed that there was an actual literal stone, and it said which kind of food was turned into whatever taste anyone desired. That was talking about the manna right there, which I love that they agree with that as well. That agrees with the rabbinical tradition that the manna, you could make it taste like pizza or hamburgers or whatever you wanted. Psalms 89 says this, but my faithfulness and my mercy shall be with them, and in my name shall his horn be exalted. I will set his hand also in the sea, and his right hand in the rivers. He shall cry unto me, you are my father, my El, and the rock of my Yeshua. In my whole research there on the stone of Scone, I tied that into the island and the sea as well in Britain, specifically because when we see the prophecy put forward by Jeremiah, and Ezekiel talks about it as well, the idea that Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, his ministry was twofold. One was to uproot the kings of Judah, and there were no kings of Judah ever again. There was never the throne of David in after the Babylonian captivity. Never happened again. But he planted. He was said to plant. Well, when did that happen? And this is where we get into his taking Tepi, the Yehudan princess, over into Egypt. He went with Baruch. And for many people, his trail goes cold in Egypt. And some of the rabbinical commentaries say he died in Egypt, Yirmiyahu. But that's not, and I don't see why they would have any desire to show Yirmiyahu going up to Britain, because it would devaluate their Zionist agenda. So this is her name here, T, daughter of Lughide, son of Etha, son of Briogan, whom Aramhan married in Spain. And there's been some translators that have thought that it should read this way: T, daughter of the house of El, child of the crown, child of the exalted one, whom Aramhan married in Spain. Now, where she got married in Spain, so Jeremiah and Baruch take her into Egypt, and they go up to Spain. And I'll come back to this picture. I'm showing you this picture here of the Eye of the Sahara. Is this Atlantis or an Atlantis? I think it's more likely an Atlantis sister city, though it could be Atlantis. Well, here in Spain, where I believe she was taken, might have been this city right here. This could have been ancient Tarshish. A lot of people are going to disagree with that. But it's interesting. This is the work that has been taken of scans, and they can see that it is another Atlantis sister city. It had the rings to it, just as the Eye of the Sahara had. It was much smaller in scale, but now it's buried beneath the marshes. But this right here was a Phoenician city. It was a Phoenician port, very important. And this very likely is where they went. The reason I bring that up is because the hill that she ruled from also has similar rings to it. This is in Dublin, and she went up here to Tara. This is known as Tara Hill, and it is often translated to be Torah Hill. And that's all I had to have. That's all I had commentary on the stone that Moshe struck. So think about this, that if he wasn't told to strike it, he is in total contempt, and he goes up and strikes this rock twice. Twice what the strike of the anvil, I think is how Pamela says it. According to, if this stone is Mashiach, the living water that's coming forth, he's striking Mashiach. Like, this is, a big deal. So that's obviously why he was kicked out of the land. Polly, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just like the Phoenicians built these cities, the sons and daughters and the descendants of the Phoenicians were the Carthaginians and Carthage and Hannibal and all these other guys from Carthage were Rome's, thorn in the flesh, I guess. And their naval yard in Carthage was a circular structure just like this, and it's in Tanzania now. But the Phoenicians were really, really good naval strategists, and all of their docks were a circular system just like this.
Yeah.
So that's astounding. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
And this goes into a lot of Atlantis research and so on and so forth, how Plato described Atlantis, and people are looking at, maybe it was Eye of the Sahara, maybe it's this location in Spain, maybe it's somewhere else. I know that Roger Spur of Mud Fossil University is really big on the Eye of the Sahara being Atlantis. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm more of the opinion that it's very likely there was a confederacy of cities as testified by Spain. And I don't really know obviously where Plato said Atlantis was, it was exactly on this spot, right here in Spain, right at the Strait of Gibraltar, right around it, same spot. Not in the Eye of the Sahara over here, but who am I to say? Anyways, Phoenician cities, there it is, and you see kind of some similar circular stuff there for where Tepe ruled from, supposedly. And also, I was going to say this right here on Torah Hill, this is where the tomb of the prophet, I guess his name is Erbanel, and many, many, many people believe that that's just a corruption of Jeremiah. That on Torah Hill, this is where he lived and he ruled, and he watched over Tepe for the end of his days. And this is where he planted the Yehudan kingdom. All right, let's talk about the fiery serpents, because I know you guys wanted to go there. We have so much to cover tonight. This passage here so this is the Targum. So this is what the Targum says. And the people thought wickedly in their heart and talked against the word of Yahweh, and contended with Moshe, saying, why did you bring us up from Miriam to die in the wilderness, for there's neither bread nor water, and our souls weary of manna, this light food, and the bath coal. Now, every time you see the bath coal, that is referring to a feminine, a voice from heaven that is represented by a dove. And the bath coal fell from the high heaven and thus spake. And of course, this is the Ruach HaKodesh. Come, all men, and see all the benefits which I have done to the people whom I brought up free out of Mitzrayim. I made manna come down for them from heaven. Yet now turn they and murmur against me. Yet behold, the serpent, whom in the days of the beginning of the world I doomed to have dust for his food, hath not murmured against me, but my people are murmuring about their food. Now shall the serpents who have not complained of their food come and bite the people who complain. So now we are seeing a direct connection to the serpent in the wilderness, who was cast down. He, his feet was removed. He had to slither on his belly, eat the dust of the earth. And it says that he didn't complain about his food. And so now they're coming to get their revenge on the people of Yah who are complaining about their food. I'll have more to say on that, I think. Ecclesiastes 10:11, again, the Targum says this: when seraphim snakes are stirred up to bite and to cause harm in the world. So right here, we're seeing a connection that these serpents were seraphim. I'm going to be giving two theories tonight, but there's a very good case to be made that these were seraphim angels, these serpents that came in. And it makes you wonder about this bronze one, a copper one, excuse me, not bronze, but copper put on the pole. It is on account of the sins of Yashrael, who did not engage in the words of Torah quietly. And also, there is no advantage for a slanderer who speaks with a third tongue, for he will be burned in the fire of Gehenna. I used these passages when I gave my whole end of the millennial kingdom talk. Actually, no, the Wastelands of the Seraphim, one of my favorite papers I ever wrote. It's on my website. I've done a lot of update work to it, and showing that these seraphim are released to, and these I think are the reptilians too. I think they're related to the reptilians. They are sent into the world to when Yashrael is not engaged in the Torah and they're rebelling against it. They're brought in to bring about calamity on them. Now I'm going to ask you to compare Genesis 3:15 now with John 3:16. And it says, this is the Aramaic Targum again, and I will put enmity between thee and thy woman, famous passage, the heel passage, prophecy, the serpent seed prophecy, and between the seed of thy son and the seed of her sons. And it shall be, when the sons of the woman keep the commandments of the Torah, they will be prepared to smite thee upon thy head. But when they forsake the commandments of the Torah, you will be ready to wound them in their heel. Nevertheless, for them there shall be a medicine, but for thee there will be no medicine. And they shall make a remedy for the heel in the days of the king Mashiach. So remember the whole story, right? The serpents are coming and biting them. But when Moshe put that, I guess, copper serpents up there on the pole, that was medicine. They could be bitten, they could look, and if they believed, they had faith, they could be saved. Okay, so this comes from, I'll skip this one here with the description of the seraphim in Isaiah. Well, this one here, it says in Isaiah 36, the burden of the beast of the Negev into land of trouble and anguish, from whence come the young and old lion, the viper, and the fiery flying serpents. So I'm going to be talking more about this basilisk creature. And in fact, you see that if you look at the Targum, it calls it a basilisk. So there seems to be a connection between these certain types of seraphim angels and these, maybe it's not totally spiritual. There might be a physical connection. This here, let me just get to John 3:16 before I read from the accounts of the vision of Amram and the accounts of Enoch. You guys know this passage. John 3:16, but starting with verse 14, and as Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. I need to scroll down so you guys can read this. Even so must the son of Adam be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have eternal life. For God so, I'll just read it in the King James, I guess. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he had not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Now, people love when they hear that I'm a Torah guy, and I believe in fruits and, and being obedience, right? And they hate that. And so they'll come and say, oh, I'm a John 3:16 person. I believe in the Bible. What about you? Do you believe in the Bible? And they'll point out John 3:16. I'm like, yeah, I love John 3:16. And they think they have me. I'm like, but you know what? I not only believe in John 3:16, I believe in John 3:21 as well. How about we just read it a little bit further and see what it says? And this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hates the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light. Man, this is like purely the teachings of John here. I mean, you see First John all in this, that his deeds may be made manifest that are wrought in God. So it's basically saying that if you believe, if you have faith, you're going to have faithfulness. If you truly believe, you're going to have faithfulness. You are not afraid of exposing your deeds to the light. And the people who are evil and wicked or disobedient of the commands, they're going to recoil to this, and they're not going to truly be in the light. Oh, let me go back up here to this passage. This is kind of a fascinating from the account of Enoch. This is when he's taken up to heaven. And we read this. After Enoch, said this, the multitude took up arms to kill him. They wanted to do away with this guy. And suddenly a whirlwind came from heaven as a storm of fire. Within the whirlwind of fire were seraphim, dragons of the power of Elohim. So here we have a passage where the seraphim are actually referred to as dragons. And all who saw this became blind in that moment, for their eyes were burned from their sockets. So here we have a scene from like the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark, pretty much. Their eyes were burned from their sockets when they saw these dragons. I'll skip the visions of Abram tonight just for lack of time. I'll actually be talking about that when I go through my reptilian research in a few weeks anyway, so something to look forward to. And here we see an interesting, this is an inscription, a hieroglyphic hymn that was used for the coronation of the pharaoh, and it was found within the pyramids in Egypt. And it says this: the doors of the horizon are open, their bolts are slipped. He comes to thee, O red crown. He comes to thee, O fiery one. The word is seraph, like seraphim. They were the fiery ones. He comes to you, O great one. He comes to you, O magician, O red crown. I won't repeat all this. I don't want to give some incantation or whatever. But it says, O magician, O fiery snake, seraph. So it's kind of an interesting Egyptian perspective there. Here's an alternate theory of what was happening. We're going to look at the serpents were thunderbirds theory. Now, this is I'm sorry to break the news, this is a fake photo. This is apparently supposed to be the pterodactyl thunderbird that was found in Tombstone in 1880, I believe. I actually have that original article up on my website if you want to go check it out. It's the latest one on there. And yeah, fake photo. There's actually a lot of photos that have supposedly emerged from Tombstone. Here's another one. I mean, this one even looks, what is that, Gumby? I mean, it's faker than fake, but whatever. Another fake photo that's supposedly the pterodactyl that they captured in Tombstone, the Thunderbird. And here's even a faker photo. I mean, what is it, strings? I don't know what's going on here. I mean, what is this? Guy has like part of the wing over here he clipped off. Apparently this is like
AI.
after he's dead.
That's
okay.
AI
Well, yeah.
From a year and a half ago. I know that.
Well, that would make sense because I'd never seen this photo before and it just emerged. But the reason I actually added this photo was if you read the Tombstone article of the flying snake, whatever, that they found with bat-like wings that they found in the desert, it actually talked about its arms like that, and it didn't have like a beak. It actually had a mouth like that with teeth. Like this AI photo actually captures the way they described it, I think, better than the other photos did. Now here's another fake photo. I don't know why I'm showing you guys this time, but here's another fake photo. I mean, what is that, a cartoon? I don't know. But the point is that there was apparently, the Tombstone historians believe that there was an actual photograph taken of the bird that they captured, and the Thunderbird, and it went either missing, destroyed. It has never surfaced, probably for good reason. And since we're on cryptic photos, I just want to show you this because we're having fun tonight. I don't know. This is apparently, Polly, I did this for you. I thought you might enjoy this tonight. I don't know what's going on here. These are the Nazis going on a hunt for the Yeti. I have no clue what this is. If that's the Yeti, it looks like a man in a suit to me. But and then we have this other very strange, they claim this was the Yeti that they found. Very strange creature. All right, so let's talk about this basilisk-like creature. These are pictures from the Dark Ages, the medieval era, describing a snake with like bat-like wings. And here's a beautiful wood cutting. I'd like to carving. I'd like to actually see that in person. All right, so let's talk about Josephus. Actually, Herodotus is the first one. And he says, so keep in mind, we're going with two theories here. We're going one that is seraphim. This is the one I would lean on, that they are seraphim angels that were sent. These were evil ones that were sent to attack Israel because of their complaints. But was there a physicality to it? That's kind of what I'm trying to address tonight. So Herodotus talks about this in Egypt. He says, there is a region, moreover, in Arabia, situated nearly over against the city of Buto, to which place I came to inquire about the winged serpents. Now, this is a very important account because he actually says he sees just this canyon full of the bones. And in another place, I think it's in Herodotus too, he said that these winged serpents are like these snake-like serpents. They would get into the spice trees and they would have to get like brooms and torches to get them out of the trees. They would like hiss at them. And when I came thither, I saw bones of serpents and spines in quantity so great that it is impossible to make report of the number. And there were heaps of spines, some heaps large, and others less large, and others smaller than these. And the heaps were many in number. Down at the bottom, he says, the form of the serpent is like that of the water snake, but he has wings without feathers, and as like as possible to the wings of a bat. Now you can, maybe I need to write a paper on this and just go through all the research, because there's a bunch of ancients that talked about this very creature, and they said they saw it in person. So I believe this is a creature that did exist and no longer does. Similar account in Jasher, chapter 72, we see that Balaam, this is in Moses's missing years, the 40 years between him leaving Egypt and his coming back to Egypt, when he becomes the king of Cush, and he runs Balaam out of town. Balaam was there. And it says that in order to keep Moses out, Balaam instructed them to build, they basically build these pits where they put rivers there. And in these pits, they put numerous serpents by their incantations and enchantments. Well, what were these serpents? I'm going to build a case that they may have been these basilisk creatures. So Moses then instructs in the next chapter for the men to get these storks. And these storks were going to go in and eat all these serpents up. Just passing over this for lack of time. Send forth each man his young stork upon the serpents, and they sent forth each man his young stork at the king's order. And the young storks ran up upon the serpents, and they devoured them all and destroyed them out of that place. Well, this is what we read in Josephus. He says the same story, which is interesting because, Jasher and Josephus and ancient source, they back each other up. So was Josephus getting this information from Jasher, I wonder? He says, but Moshe prevented the enemies and took and led his army before those enemies were praised of his attacking them. For he did not march by the river, but by land, where he gave a wonderful demonstration of, okay, let me just skip ahead. Moses and Moshe invented a wonderful stratagem to preserve the army safe and without hurt. For he made baskets like unto arks of sedge and filled them with ibes, and carried these are the birds, the stork creatures, and carried them along with them, which animal is the greatest enemy to serpents imaginable, for they fly from them when they come near them. Did you see that? They fly away when they come near them. And as they fly, they are caught and devoured by them. So these serpents are flying away. And these stork creatures, these herons, storks, ibes, whatever, they're flying after them and catching them in the air, if you caught that. Pliny the Elder says this. The Egyptians are also invoked their ibis against the incursions of serpents. So Pliny the Elder is agreeing with this and saying this is an Egyptian pastime. This is what they did. And the people of Elis, their god, when the vast multitude of flies are bringing pestilence among them. Now, here's a bunch of accounts here. This comes from the website Genesis Park. I didn't have time to track down all these quotes, but we see tons of people, including Aristotle and others, all talking about the personal references to these flying serpents. Some of them saw them in person, and they wrote about them. All right. So one more thing on the brazen serpents, just going to read from Legends of the Jews, this one paragraph, and this backs up what we already read. Then a voice sounding from the heavens, that would be the Bath Kol, became audible upon earth, making this announcement. Come hither and behold, O ye men. Come hither and hearken, ye creatures of flesh. In the beginning of things, I cursed the serpent with the words, dust shalt thou eat, yet it complained not of its food. And so she says, the very serpents that during the 40 years march had been, the writer is now speaking. The very serpents that during the 40 years march had been burned by the cloud of glory and lay heaped up high round about the camp. These same serpents now bit the people so terribly that their poison burned the souls of those whom they attacked. So that's really interesting that these seraphim, serpentine, flying creatures, whatever they are, they were being burned, and the camp was being protected of them, but not this time. They were let in to come and get them. All right, before I go on any further, Polly, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Death of Miriam. It was a short passage, so I'll keep it short. It's kind of interesting here that it says the whole congregation. I'm showing you the Greek LXX here. And the Paleo says all the gathered assembly. It's kind of interesting because Korah has just been killed and his rebels, and now we're seeing the whole congregation coming together. And I liked that the word kudash was used there in the Paleo. And I was trying to figure out if that's a play on words. Is it they were dwelling in a holy place? Basically saying that at this point, at this moment, it seemed to me like Yashua was in a good, healthy spot. They all came together and they mourned for Miriam. Let's move on. King Og. Here we go. I'm going to give you the bio of King Og tonight. And first, let's talk about the Aramaic Targum. Let's see what it says here. Now, I'm going to just... Okay, so the rabbinical tradition goes crazy with King Og, and they make him into a mountain-sized giant. Now, this would give the mud fossil community a lot to talk about. I'm not sure how I feel about that. If King Og is specifically material, physicality, yeah, I'm not going with that. I think he was like maybe a 20-footer. All right. If we're talking about a spiritual king from the land of the dead, and you want to make him hundreds of feet tall, fine by me. So let's just, and I'm going to show you there could be a good case for that. All right. So let's just go through what the Aramaic Targum says. Then they turned and went up by the way of Mathnan, and Og, the king of Mathnan, came to meet us. That's weird. It's for Bashan. They say Mathnan there. That's kind of interesting. He and all his people to give battle at Edrei. And it was when Moshe saw Og, he trembled before him, stricken with fear. I should point out that I know, Polly, you just not. I always bring this up whenever you're on for some reason. The book of Og, whether it's legit or not, I don't know. I actually think the letter at the end in the last chapter is totally legit. The letter that he supposedly wrote to Moshe. It is a blasphemous, horrid letter that he wrote to Moshe. All the things that he's going to do to Moshe when he catches him. And if he actually shipped that to Moses and he read that, yeah, that's a pretty terrible thing to read. So anyways, Moses is apparently stricken with fear when he sees Og. But he soon answered and said, this is Og the wicked, who taunted Abraham our father and Sarah, saying, you are like trees planted by the water channels, but bring forth no fruit. Therefore hath the Holy One, blessed be he, spared him to live through generations, that he might see the great multitude of their children and be delivered into our hands. Do you see what just happened there? According to the Aramaic Targum, it's saying that Og was alive in the time of Abraham and Sarah, and that he taunted them for not having children. And because of that, Yah specifically wanted them to live so he could see what would happen to their children. And of course, we'll see that he's older than that. Then spake Yahweh unto Moshe, fear him not, for I have delivered him into thine hand, and all his people and country, and thou shalt do to him as thou hast done to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon. Now it was after Og the wicked had seen the camp of Yashruel spreading over 6 miles, he said with himself, I will make war against this people, that they may not do to me as they have done to Sihon. So went he and tore up a mountain 6 miles in size. Okay, so let's just go with this. This is what it says. He tore up a mountain 6 miles in size and brought it upon his head. So he picks up a mountain 6 miles worth of real estate, a big chunk of ground. He lifts it up over him. I can see how this is goes south for him really quick, almost like a Tom and Jerry cartoon, and brought it upon his head to hurl it upon them. But the word of Yahweh forthwith prepared a reptile which ate into the mountain and perforated it, and his head was swallowed up within it. And he sought to withdraw it. So there's a huge serpents type dragon creature in this mountain that I guess ate Og's head. But he could not withdraw it because his back teeth and his front ones were drawn hither and thither. And Moshe went and took an axe of 10 cubits and sprang 10 cubits and struck him on the ankle of his foot. And he fell and died beyond the camp of Yasharel. Thus it is written, and they smote him and his sons and daughters and all his people till none of them remained to escape, and they took possession of his hand. All right. So there's that story. But then we read this in Deuteronomy. Now, this is just your basic Masoretic text, Hebrew. All the cities of the plain and all Gilead and Bashan and to so on and so forth, cities of the kingdom of Og and Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim. So we know that there are the Rephaim. They are the descendants of the Watchers. They are the children of the Watchers, the Nephilim. They're one of the tribes. And I didn't bring forth the verses tonight to show you guys how Rephaim appears to be a word that could be like the living dead. They are used interchangeably with the dead in Sheol, which begs the question, what is Bashan? All right. Is Bashan an actual, just a physicality, a place, or is it connected with the realm of the dead? This is something, Paulie, that Michael Heiser talked a lot about. He speculated a lot on. So here, and I actually found some rabbinical individuals, some rabbinical Jews recently who are asking the same question. And this is what it says in Psalm 68. It says, a mountain of Alahayam is the mountain of Bashan. A high mountain is the mountain of Bashan. Let's go down to the bottom of verse 22. It says, Yahweh has said, I will bring again from Bashan. I will bring them again from the depths of the sea. So the question is being asked, and there's a lot to say about the abyss in the ocean, and maybe Sheol is actually at the bottom in the deep. But there's this idea of bringing people up from Bashan. And so people are asking the question, is that a reference to the land of the dead? Well, let's keep reading. I know you've talked to me a lot about this, Paulie. Maybe you can throw in your own 2 cents about the grotto of Pan. And this is where Yahusha answered and said unto Peter, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar Yonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say unto thee that thou art Kepha, and upon this rock I will build my church. That's a play on words there. Kepha means rock. And upon this rock I will build my church, my ecclesia, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Now, there's been a lot of questions as what does this mean? Does it mean that the gates of Hades will not break out of the gate? Or is it more like an invasion into Sheol? Paulie, what's your thought on that? Any thoughts? I know you have one.
Well, just like you brought up the Og's bed, every single thing you're saying, 2 verses down, that's the point I wanted to make. So far, you're tracking with me. Michael Heiser has a lot of great stuff. He, again, like you said about 45 minutes ago, he does. That's funny. He does have the predisposition to mock the things he doesn't understand, and so when he introduces himself and the word and ancient Hebrew dynamics into something, he also has to in his own. Well, he's passed away, but he did have the paradigm or the telescope of science in it. So he dismisses a lot, but his idea that the spirituality, where Yeshua says, "Hey, this is the gates of hell," and this actually goes back to was it in Discord chat earlier on Dan Spectre Cosmology? Someone was saying that the God of the Old Testament, blessed man, the God of the Old Testament seems, and he was just talking off of his head. He wasn't really doesn't believe this, but the God of the Old Testament seems like the different than the God of the New Testament. I've come to see it through, with the help of Michael Heiser, as when Yeshua came to fruition in the flesh as an old man status at age 30, or as a son of man, instead of a son of the law. He said, you know what? We're going to change the dynamic power structure of everything that's happened before. I personally believe that he was making a point. He was making a statement to all of the other B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, to all of the Watcher Elohim, to all of the former rulers and mayors and magistrates, as it were, that, hey, I'm here now. Things are changing. So when he rebukes the demons at Gadarenes, he's actually not in Judea. He's actually on the other side of the lake. So he's somewhere else. He's outside of his own territory, as it were. They're like, "What are you doing? Why? What are you?" And he's like, "Shut up, get out of him." And oh, don't send us into the pit. He's like, "Yeah, it's not your time yet. So go ahead and go somewhere else. Send us into the pigs." Okay. So he's establishing a new dynamic structure of rule and reign. So when he brings the guys here to the Grotto of Pam, he's saying, "Look, guys," and you can believe one way or the other, but it's still the same truism. He says, "Look, guys, here is the gates of Sheol, and guess what? They can't withstand." And so, a gate is not an offensive structure. A gate is a defensive structure, the violent taken by force. So we know that if it's a metaphor, it's a great metaphor. It's a really great metaphor, because Herman, or Bashan, as Michael Heiser says, is the same thing. Mount Herman, in his book Reversing Herman, or one
Yeah, I
of the
think so.
others. Yeah, one of the others. He has really great points talking about this power structure dynamic between the B'nai Elohim and the literal Ruach, the word of Yahuwah. If it's true, then we can take it as secondarily and say, okay, a lot of these writings of the Jews, a lot of Jonathan Ben Uziel, a lot of these guys are understanding the fact that the Nephilim are coming back and reincarnating, not reincarnating per se, because they're always the incarnation of themselves, but they are coming into a new human form. And so Og is a literal he's either a B'nai Elohim in the big list of the big dudes, or he's like one of the generals, or he's just this really rampant rogue-like character who, I guess you could say, he's a Ronin. He has no master. He's just his own powerhouse. Maybe it was Nimrod. Maybe the same demon form came into a different body. Nimrod was Og. And we know that we're going to pick up Og later, Gog and Magog and all these other. So we know that this powerhouse, this dynamic entity, has either, and what, I forget who wrote it, Noel, but one of the stories was that he was on the Ark of Noah, hanging out on the roof. I can't remember where that was.
It's an Aramaic Targum.
Aramaic Targum. Okay, yeah. So, oh yeah, that's the one I translated that to. But so Og just appears all the time, and like when you look at the actual. I call it Phillips 66, but the 70 books of the canon of the what we call the Holy Bible, he's not much in there, right? And so,
Yeah,
but he is prevalent in all these other myths, and we have to take Josephus, and we have to take Herodotus. And I'll tell you what, when I was, and I wanted to talk about this earlier, but you were on a roll. When I was in the 11th grade, I went on a big Homer, and Homer was my gateway into this new world of everything. And so I found myself reading Demosthenes and Herodotus and Josephus and all these other guys, Pliny, Polycarp, and just going down and down and down the little Seraphim trail. And it's a like you were saying, like you presented, oh, I don't know, maybe 300 verses, and that's the tip of the iceberg. We find that when there's so much that lines up, there's got to be a better explanation than just the physical explanation. There's got to be a spiritual hook or a spiritual tie-in. Anyway.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you. This is maybe the award for my favorite comment of the night. Peter versus Pan. At the grotto, Pan where he became Peter. So love the comment. So, anyways, making a point here that there is a thought that that this grotto of Pan, it was connecting to the underworld, the idea that the entranceway to Sheol. And so let's go on here to my next point. Og, the defender of graves and the dead. Now, there was a 5th century BC, that's when it was dated, a Phoenician tomb inscription that was found to say this: and if anyone seeks to open this sarcophagus and disturb my bones, Og will seek him out, the strong one, and with all the assembly of the gods. So the thought is that Og was perhaps he was brought up from Bashan, from the realm to defend them. They actually, kind of an incantation. So they invoked the dead, right? The spirits from Sheol, and he came up to defend them and was defeated. That is one of the thoughts historically that could be going on here. Now, as you mentioned, Polly, that this idea that he did ride on the ark. Well, when you look at the book of Og, again, this is a super blasphemous book. I'm not recommending anyone read it. I have read it a few times for research purposes, and this is a very graphic passage right here. But basically, this is when he says he killed Nimrod, and it was a very violent way. What's weird about this passage is that it happened before the flood. In fact, the flood water is coming down, and this is an epic battle. He calls it the 100,000 giant war. So you have all these Rephaim, Nephilim, different tribes, those with Nimrod and those with Og, and they're going and clashing and fighting, and they're sending dragons to each other, and they have these evil spirits that they hurl out, and they enter into other people's bodies and cause them to kill each other. And I mean, it's just this. So you have Noah's Ark sailing away, and the water is coming up and it's coming down, and they're just killing each other in this violent war. Well, this was a part of my research in the many lives of Nimrod, for those of you who have caught it or read the paper and watched the presentation. And this idea that Nimrod, Og, they were these maybe Gilgamesh as well. Gilgamesh was, we know Gilgamesh was after the flood, but there's also the Gilgamesh before the flood. We saw that in the Book of the Giants. It was a Gilgamesh, a giant. So what's going on here? Are these just different people called Nimrod, different people called Gilgamesh, or are these repeated these immortal spirits that just re-enter a body, or, as you said, not reincarnate in the as we know reincarnation, but a different way of coming about into a physicality before and afterwards. And of course, Nimrod and Og hated each other passionately. And I would say the same thing in Genesis, because when you see the Genesis, the 13 war, Og seems to be in the Canaanite side of it, whereas Nimrod is out in Babylon, and they seem to be warring with each other. And Og actually helps out the kings of Sodom and others who went up against Nimrod's kingdom. So it seemed like they were always opposed to each other. Here's where it says, this was kind of interesting in the Aramaic Targum. It says that in the day of the flood, when the rainwater is coming down, when the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the giants were gathered there together with their sons to protrude them, and afterwards the windows of heaven were opened, and the rains came down for 40 days, 40 nights. So while this 100,000 giant war is going on, you have all these other giants that are trying to stop they're actually being helpful. Like, the others are killing each other off, and these are like, well, let's try to stop the deluge from happening. And in 3rd Baruch, it talks about there were 409,000 giants that were killed in the flood. So that actually adds up. If there's 100,000 giants fighting each other, you still have another 300,000 elsewhere in the world that are doing other things, including trying to stop the deluge. So, okay, and one more here. I think we're going to end on this tonight. maybe I'll talk a little bit from Legends of the Jews, but this is a good place to end. And it said, "And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, and had ridden protected upon the top of the ark." So it says this in Genesis 14. This is not in the flood passage, which would be like Genesis 7, and sustained with food by Noah. Now, I have a lot of questions about this, right? And we can all kind of laugh. Oh, sure, Og was on the ark, but what if there was something else going on? All right, what if there wasn't a physicality to Og? What if there was a something of the spiritual nature? Because we know that when Noah got off the ark in Jubilees, according to that, like he was just being assaulted by all the demons who wanted their revenge. And these demons were the disembodied spirits of the giants who were killed in the flood. So what's going on with Og? Not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of Yahweh and say, were there not giants who in the first times rebelled against Yahweh of the world and perished from the earth? But when these kings made war, behold, Og, who was with them, said in his heart. So this is I said the Genesis 13, I guess the Genesis 14 war. Og, who was with them, said in his heart, I will go and show Abram concerning Lot, who was led captive, that he may come and deliver him from the hands of the kings into whose hands he had been delivered. So he's the one that actually comes and tells them that Lot was taken captive. And I've had discussions on this with people. If this event did happen and Og really was there, why was he helping out Abram, who he taunted? My thought is that he hated Nimrod so much that he was willing to help out Abram here to get Lot back, because he hated these intruders in his land, and he wanted to make sure that his land was under his control. All right, so I'm going to skip all this on. I think this will be a good place to end. Maybe next week I'll talk a little bit about the death of Aaron a little bit more if there's time, just because it's really touching in the Aramaic Targum, where it talks about Aaron and how much the people loved him. And after his, it says that Aaron wasn't allowed to go into the land because of the golden calf incident. Of course, you guys know that. But Aaron was so loved by the people. And it said that he was passionate for marriages, that he wanted people to stay together, and he would go and counsel people. And whereas people hated Moses, which we know is factual according to the Torah, they hated Moses because he was the lawgiver, and he was judging and all this kind of stuff. Aaron was like a priest who he would take their sacrifices and give, be a part of that covenant relationship with Yah, and he was gentle and they loved him. So it said that even though Aaron couldn't go into the land, it said many Aarons went into the land because there was a high population of mothers and fathers naming their children Aaron because they loved him so much. So I thought that was a little touching. But I'm going to end on that tonight. Polly, what are your closing thoughts tonight? And thank you, of course, for being here. I felt like I did so much talking tonight, and you just sat there and listened to me, but I appreciate everything you had to say. So do you have any closing thoughts?
Yes. Number one, this was awesome. Number two, I sat and thought and pontificated quite a lot. Number three, it's an honor to be here, and I am oh so humbled to even be a part of this family, talking to you people out there. I am also more blessed than I know because I have the call to serve as a servant. My brother's middle name is Aaron, and when Pastor Aaron died, when the poet, song seamstress, song leader, worship leader Miriam passed away, it was a rough time, and they were thrown into war, and it was war upon war upon war. This is a very strange transition. In our Torah portion, there's a lot to identify, and there's a lot to go through tonight, and I'm really happy to be here for it. What is it? Genesis 7:4, and every living thing was destroyed on the face of the earth. The word living thing is yakum, and so there's even more and more evidence. And this is what I wrote about in my novel, By the Gates of the Garden of Eden, that the Nephilim are alive and well, and they're still here. And Og is still out there somewhere, probably in Joe Biden's mind, or his handlers. and he's still doing his thing, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm quite sure that they're not done, and they're still having dragon wars everywhere that we just can't see them. But the evidences that they were here are there, and Noel had some photos up. There's hundreds of thousands of pieces of evidence that the world is bigger than we're showing on MSNBC, and we just have to keep on digging. And so if you're in a position of struggle now, start digging, continue to dig, because the Ruach HaKodesh, the gentle touching spirit of wisdom, love, and peace will give you endurance to move forward into your new calling of not just knowledge, but the understanding and wisdom and the application of that knowledge. So again, Noel, thank you for letting me hang out, and it's been a pleasure. God bless you.
I feel bad because I just know, I mean, the comment was put out there, and I didn't realize I didn't even have my Charlie Brown mug. I usually do. And of course, you have the backdrop, so I'm sorry we're not matched tonight. That was
my mom
sweet...
gave this to me when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and made curtains, and she passed away 28 years ago now, 29 years ago. And so that's the only thing I have left from her. So
wow.
Happiness is a stack of old comic books. Thank goodness for people, and happiness is loving people or liking people or something like that. It blesses me still. It's good.
Well, I'm going to leave you guys on this thought tonight. I'm going to read this line, and then I'm going to close off for the night. Here we go. When he, this would be Moshe, spoke of the remarkable death that awaited Aaron, Moses meant to allude to the fact that Aaron, like his sister Miriam and later Moshe, was to die not through the angel of death, but by a kiss from Elohim. Good night, everyone.